Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to Hearthstone. Man, it was quite the break between the two last recording and this one because I messed up and it added considerable amount of time to edit out the video. We need to play Murloc, so let's hop in here. So nothing is going right for me today. At least nothing so far. I also didn't mark off the one thing I talked about, so I guess I should do that. I guess I can just with the dry erase marker just or whatever this are these called, dry erase markers? Yeah.
You asked for it.
I will fight with honor.
Let's start going down our list here. It's kind of weird because, like, I suppose when I started in schools, most of the boards were dry erase marker boards, but also very rarely used too. If I'm just gonna be honest, like it seemed like maybe the math teachers in my math classes would have something that they wrote at the beginning of the day for each class, but very few people actually went up to the board and wrote anything. In fact, most of the teachers that I recall, I was mostly ignoring them, so I don't recall exactly what they were doing. I think they mostly talked, though. If they would read out of the book, a lot of times they would make the students read chapters out of the book to everybody else, so they were doing basically no work whatsoever and just babysitting. They would assign work and then we would spend the entire class doing work, which I guess at the time at least was better than doing homework for the same amount, but very little teaching I think actually went on. Anyways, so my point there is my familiarity of using a whiteboard is actually very low, and frankly, even in school, if the teachers were using it, the students weren't. I guess that might be a cool teaching method, though, if you gave each student a whiteboard and told them write down the answer to this question and then turn it around and show everybody, and so you're playing kind of like a group Jeopardy or something. Then the teacher could see if people are actually understanding or cheating or what. I guess the person in the back could definitely cheat from everybody in the front, but I don't know. It might work. It might be an interesting thing. But moving on to video games, because that's what we're supposed to be talking about here. Interesting. Move. I'm just trying to play Murlocs here. Microsoft has announced a $10 a month Game Pass service with 100 rotating games. Now, what would be interesting here is if this came to Windows and it wasn't Universal Windows Platform or the Windows Store, as it's better known.
What to
like,
do?
I can almost see it as kind of this weird Netflix thing for kids where you're only paying $10 a month per game, but on top of that you're already paying $60 a year. So you're talking now $120 plus $60 for the online service. So you're talking $180 a year per games. I heavily suspect that many people do not spend $180 on games alone every single year, particularly for your kids. I would very much guess that is the case. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's not as good of a deal as you would originally might guess. That being said, if you are buying more than 3 brand new games at $60, 60, 120, 180 CC, they've got this money balanced out exactly. If every single year you're always buying at least 4 games and 3 of them are at $60 or more, then the $10 service seems like a good deal. If and only if you've never played any of the games that are rotating 100 games, which is not actually how it's going to work. Inherently, I think the practical execution of this is not going to work at all. Now,
What to do?
GameStop hates it because it kind of bites well into the used game market. In comparison, if you look at it from a different angle and say, well, I spend at least $10 every month at GameStop getting a used game, then you've got a good deal. But that's the only instance in which you've got a good deal, is in that instance. Here, let's go ahead and kill this one. And attack. And attack. I do want to get victories just to move up the rank, but that's not the main priority here. If this put GameStop out of business, that wouldn't be the greatest thing in the world. One of the weird things is Walmart never wanted to use the shelf space for used video games, and if GameStop disappeared tomorrow, I don't think Walmart or Target or any of the big like superstores would pick up the slack there. In fact, Walmart in particular is pretty bad about just lowering the price of things, because they have hard limits on how much the price of something can be limited. So can be lowered, so things can sit on shelves of Walmart in some rare occasions where it's been there for 5 years and it hasn't been lowered anywhere near it. I most recently saw a picture of a 100-foot Cat 5e cable for like $75 in a office supply store, and you can get a similar 100-foot Cat 5e network cable for $2 on Amazon. So you're talking massive difference, and highly unlikely that would ever sell. Although on an office supply store it might actually sell, because there are plenty of jobs where somebody is given only permission to shop from office supply stores, and so they can't just go to Amazon.com and get a better deal. And so that's often how they work.
The light shall bring victory.
So,
I will fight
as it
with
seems
honor.
now, though, the Microsoft $10 a month for 100 rotating games, probably good if you spend over $10 a month on used games and you just don't care and you just want to play games and you really don't care what games you play. Much like Netflix, they probably need a lot more than 100 games rotating to catch enough of a market share of enough of a random different demographics for it to really work. Because the thing about Netflix is there's always at least a few things for every demographic. If, like, I like to watch crazy Korean and like drama horror movies, that's a few things that show up there. I like to see a lot of the foreign films on Netflix, and there's always a little bit there, but I fully admit that 90% of the people on Netflix aren't gonna have any interest in that at all, and so they've got their other things. Like when I look at the Netflix Kids, that is full of kids cartoons that, one, I have no interest in because I'm not a kid, and two, I have no interest in because they weren't out when I was a kid, so there's no nostalgia there either. And when that works together like that, that allows Netflix to keep the child demographic. It allows
Is
them
someone injured?
to keep the crazy South Korean fan demographic. And they do that over and over again. There's a lot of Spanish horror movies that are on there that you wouldn't even realize it. And a lot of times you don't even see them because their recommendation engine is pretty good. It's not great. I still get a lot of the same things recommended to me over and over again because I've pretty much exhausted Netflix until they come out with the new things. And you can see with their new shows too that they have some crazy things. The Test, I believe, was the name of the show. That was this Spanish drama that was translated and came over, and right next to The Test they come out with a Marvel series, or they come out with is it called The Howling, the horror series? It's not, I didn't find it that good. Just continuously here trying to play more Murlocs. So I would suspect, if I was just to guess, in the United States market, Netflix has at least 500 to 3,000 titles. Specifically titles now, not episodes, because you could certainly cheat with that and massively increase the count if you said number of videos instead. And I think Microsoft is going to have to get almost every single video game that has ever come out that can be backward compatible in, because that's interesting that destroyed him. Oh, the ooze wasn't a Murloc. Interesting. So I guess we understand now why this makes it an ooze with taunt instead of a Murloc with taunt. So yeah, 100 games may be too low, because I could probably think of 50 really awful games that run terribly that would get thrown in there. And who knows if they don't start cheating immediately or a year in, and start adding some of those Xbox Live Arcade free games into that. And if they add them and don't, and on top of the 100 actual games that people would actually want to play, that's fine. But if they start losing the licenses, which inherently I would assume that this is the reason why this hasn't happened before this point. Yeah, 100 seems a little low. GameSpot and used video game market, like, honestly, I don't want it to die, because I have zero confidence that if all the money that you got from used video games went into the pockets of video game developers, they would make better video games. I just have no confidence there. I think all that money would just go in the pockets of the CEOs of those companies, and inherently getting rid of GameStop affects the economy horribly, even though they're a terrible employer and they give very low hours from what I hear. If all of those stores fired the 3 to 4 people, part-timers they had, and the one manager you have for every GameStop store, which there's usually about 2 or 3, even in a small city, you're talking 15 or 20 people that have all lost their jobs, and that's not gonna be replenished or help the economy in any way. So yeah, that's not good. let's move on to the next one. The Gears of War creator, Epic Games, has announced a cell phone game, which I find that kind of strange in itself. It's like you're the Epic Games, and yet you've announced a cell phone game. And see, the only thing I can assume from something like that is the idea that it's gotta be a different team. It's gotta be somebody who wasn't working out making a AAA Unreal Engine, I believe is Gears of War game. Somebody that just couldn't hack it there, or somebody that wanted a side project, or they made it as they were while half of the other team was debugging the last AAA game. That kind of that's the only way it makes sense, because in my mind there's clearly teams that make cell phone games that are doing 2D graphics, low effort, highly optimized to run smoother than what is really required from a console. And then there's AAA video game developers that have all the power of Xboxes, PlayStation Pros, and PCs, so they can waste a little bit of power. They can demand a higher graphics card. They don't have to optimize. So the only thing is, perhaps there's been enough shift internally that entire company is just going to cell phone games. And if that's the case, well then say goodbye to Gears of War as a series. I guess in a lot of ways though, like if Bethesda had come out and said we're making a cell phone game way earlier than when they well, they didn't even announce that they were making a cell phone game, and I think that's the right move to do it. But if they'd come out like 2 years before Fallout Shelter had come out and said we're making a cell phone game, a lot of people would have been very scared and said, oh, so they're never going to make another Elder Scrolls game, they're never going to make another Fallout game. And frankly, Bethesda has grown big enough by acquiring other companies that you could also make a counter argument to what I'm saying is 14 damager. You could make a counter argument that perhaps it is a case of they just had an extra team somewhere to make Fallout Shelter, and that's almost certainly what happened in Bethesda. Let's see, hero power, and we need mighty characters now. And who would be the characters that I have the biggest amount of things on? Let's play the Death Rattle deck. I think that probably is the deck that I have that has the biggest characters, because it has Stalag and Fugan. I don't know, we'll see when this changes, because I think we need to play 5 mana or more. And yeah, Stalag and Fugan are 5, and then Prince Malthusar and Slow Belcher and her. So I want to go ahead and keep the big ticket guys, and once I play the big ticket guys, be done. This probably will take a while. Peter Moore is leaving EA Sports to be the Liverpool Football Club CEO. So, from what I heard from the Giant Bomb, it seems like Peter Moore was obsessed with sports, and that's why he kind of was in good shape to run the sports division, and they kind of just gave that job to him because he was passed over for leadership, not so. But he didn't just get mad and leave the company completely. He stayed on as the head of their sports division, and EA is the number one person you would look to for sports games. And so now he's going to be the head of the Liverpool Football Club, which is a soccer, of course, to Americans. And it sounds like something that he's really gonna love to do. So I guess yay for him is all you can really end up saying. I don't think there's a lot of times we get these stories where people leave, and I can speculate and I can make some interesting fiction as to what I think is going to happen here. The only thought is perhaps he's just resume building, because if you become the CEO of one company, you're pretty well suited to become the CEO of another company. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that he comes back and does become the CEO of some video game company or EA itself, and this is a middle step. It is also not beyond the possibility, since it seems like he really is in love with the football club, and I can certainly understand people being big fans of their home team, which I think it is his home team, that he may just stay there and do as much as he can do. So moving on to the next story, the Video Game History Foundation has announced its first project for NES things, and what they're really looking for more than just video games. I imagine, because this foundation is really just like 5 people, and one of them had a massive Nintendo collection, much bigger than the Nintendo collection that I have and need to get rid of. And this is particularly where I'm looking, keeping an eye on this, is like, could I send all of my things to them? And they right now they just want financial donations, and inherently I think if so many people are going to have Nintendo collections, and that's going to range from having an entire garage full, which is my case, or half a garage full, to people that have just a small shelf, to people that have like 3 things and they think that's a collection. So there's probably some wide variety just between the different styles and what they would call, what they'd be interested in, what they want. Particularly they're interested right now in things like commercials, ads in non-Nintendo magazines. So when the NES first came out, if there was an electronics magazine that had an ad in it, that's the kind of stuff that's harder to zoom down. They're trying to scan all of these and get them in high resolution scans. They're trying to really collect it. They're not particularly here looking for ROMs or general carts, unless you have an extremely rare NES cart. I imagine that all the basic carts that most people have, they've already got. I'm speculating a lot here. There's another museum that's kind of new too, and I'm keeping my eye on it, and I imagine this is going to happen a lot, but eventually I personally need to get rid of my collection. I've done nothing with it. I've let it sit in the garage. There's a possibility that a lot of it's damaged. I'm really wasting my space there. My love for Nintendo was obsessive and crazy, as I'm sure it was for a lot of people. But it has long since just been eroded away, partially from an obsessive desire to collect every single thing. And frankly, if I'm going to just be honest, while I do have a few rare things. A lot of the things I have are in bad shape, even originally before they were put in the garage, and they are very common things that I imagine other collectors are going to have a lot of copies of. That being said, as time goes by, more and more of collections will get destroyed in garages, and perhaps that's just what's going to happen with me, and I really need to hurry here on the news. And so things will become rarer and rarer. I'm sure there were plenty of people a few years after Superman Action Comics #1 came out that had that, and then it was just over the 30, 40, 50 years of people just losing copies and parents throwing them out that it became rarer and rarer. Moving on to the next story, Twitch is going to start selling launcher games and give a cut to the streamer. I say launcher games because it's the Twitch launcher. The Amazon Prime, Twitch Prime thing has turned into quite the bait and switch, really. And frankly, for me, it sort of was part of the reason why I got Amazon Prime. I thought I was going to get Steam keys, and now I'm getting all these games on a Twitch launcher account that I'll never use. And the last thing I want is more division amongst places for video games as an end user. Now, it's probably better for the economy and will possibly lower the prices on Steam more often. So that might help because of competition. But also, Twitch is owned by Amazon, and Amazon has been willing and has been consistently undercutting itself. So it has become the monopoly on internet sales. You're much less likely to, let's see. Let's try and kill this. I thought this was the one that caused it to double, but it doesn't. This is the one where it gets more attack every Death Rattle character. Now, of course, I'm not a Twitch streamer, but if YouTube did the same thing, I'd be happy. And I guess in a way, it's not unheard of or impossible that YouTube is doing the same thing, because the ads that are on my videos could be anything, including video games, and there certainly have been video game commercials ads in front of other in front of videos, and YouTubers have no control over it. So, like, I would not be surprised if very quickly we see YouTube offer a very similar service, and if that actually does give a cut to me, that would be really great. But then that also starts to influence the industry a little bit too, doesn't it? Because now I potentially have this motivating factor where I might just lie and say a game is good instead, so more people buy it. And of course that would ruin my channel in the long run, but I bet people start doing that because what they've effectively done on Twitch is they've created the exact same conflict of interest that the big video game review sites have always had, and that conflict of interest being that if they say the game is good, they will get access to their next few games, and they definitely want access to the next few games because that gets them more views and that gives them more ad revenue. So that's why lots of big video game company review sites are not really trustworthy once you start looking. Valve and SMI, which is a company I've never heard of, are working to add eye tracking to the Vive and OpenVR. That is very interesting. I imagine in the second or third generation of getting that to work, that could definitely help with VR. A lot of people are not going to enjoy turning their neck around a lot for a while. That's just kind of part of a big bundle of problems with VR and being too physical and tiring. But if you can have eye tracking and then when you look to the far right, you start to turn to the far right, that might be helpful, although that may also very well make people dizzy and confused because that's not how the real world works. So they're still working on it, and it's an interesting experiment, and that's kind of all you can say right now. I still need 9 minions that cost 20, that cost 5 or more, and to use my hero power twice. No, 12 times. Ooh, that's going to be difficult. That's going to be real difficult. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on basically any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.